Good afternoon. I'm Fabian Zuleeg, the Chief Executive of the European Policy Center, and I have the pleasure to moderate this conversation with Ambassador Shengchao, who is the Chinese ambassador to Belgium, but has had a very long career, also, as we have just discussed, been in the Chinese embassy here in the mission to the European Union. So it's been good to catch up again. Thank you very much for being here for this conversation. We are talking, of course, about China-EU relations, which is very much in the discussion in Europe at the moment, so it will be very interesting to hear your perspective. So we will start with an intervention by you for a few minutes, followed by a conversation between us, and then I will also open it up to the audience. So if you have any questions, comments, please think about them beforehand, and then I will come to you before you all get your well-deserved lunch. So Ambassador, thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Fabian, and thank you, our distinguished audience. I think the last thing I would like to do is to speak between actually a very good lunch and then a starving but also highly intellectual audience. But that's something I have to do, so I have to be concise. I think on China's perspective, just now some of our scholars have already shared with you their perspectives. I'm representing China in the territory of Belgium, and Belgium is an important member of the European Union. So I would also like to share with you some of my observations on a few points. I think number one, is China a friend or a foe? And I was asked this question by many Belgian and European friends here, and whether China sees Belgium or Europe as a friend or foe. I think that it may be surprising to many people here in Brussels that this question would greatly surprise many Chinese. I don't think any Chinese on average would really ever see Belgium or Europe as a foe. In the Chinese eyes, Belgians, Europeans are our friends and partners. As simple as that. But here it can be a very serious question. So this shows how deeply that the two media in China, in Europe, and probably public opinion are actually dominated by stereotypes or misunderstandings or sometimes misinformation. And I would dare to say that probably in China things are much better. People in China tend to know Europe as it is, while probably that's not the case in Belgium or in Europe. It has many factors behind, of course, but I think this is the number one issue I would like to talk about, because that's also something I was warned by my counterpart in Beijing, the Belgian ambassador to China. He said that the biggest problem would be the perception issue. So I think this is very important because we need to have a clear and factual picture of what things are like on the ground. And in China, we do not see that there's any reason Belgium, China, Europe, China should ever become foes or rivals or competitors. Yes, there is competition, no denial. But the competition is like what we saw last year in Paris, the Olympic Games. In the Olympic Games, we have competition, but we all would cheer for the fair play and for the championship. Sometimes China won the gold medal, sometimes Belgium won gold medals, sometimes other European countries and countries from other parts of the world won gold medals. It's normal as long as we follow the same rules. So I think this is the competition we have. But the competition does not make any of us a foe or a rival. So that is about the competition. And then the second issue about China's economic development. Yes, people talk so much about overcapacity. We produce a lot. That's true, no denial. We are known and we are called the workshop of the world, indeed. But many people probably are still not aware China is very rapidly, even more rapidly, becoming a market of the world, a R&D center of the world, and also a more and more important pillar for multilateralism, for international law in this world. In all these areas, these are not challenges to Europe. These are opportunities for Europe and the rest of the world, particularly at this point in time when the international landscape is far from being certain or stable. So this offers us more opportunities. For overcapacity, people would cite sometimes some important organizations here would release some report citing that China's market shares are dominated and assisted unfairly by subsidies. Yes, there is subsidy, no denial. There is subsidy in the States. There is subsidy in Europe. As long as the subsidies are concerned, I think that China did learn a lot from our American and European friends. That's what we have learned. But at the same time we have to make sure the subsidies we give are in full compliance with WTO rules and regulations. That's what we have learned. And in terms of the figures given by some of the report there, some even latest report, I think it's far from being serious, saying that the China's subsidies is 6 to 9 times that of Europe. How can it be? Are Chinese 6 or 9 times richer than Europe? It does not make sense at all. And it says that about 60% of China's market shares are driven by subsidies. It's nonsense, I would say, categorically. Just take a look. How would Chinese government, even if it has that wish, how can it deliver the subsidies? It cannot. China today, economic size is as big as European Union in total, 20 trillion US dollars. And its foreign trade is about 6 trillion US dollars. And when we talk about it, the trade imbalance, which is real, and we need to address, no denial, that even when we bear in mind the trade imbalance, last year, Europe exported 200 billion US dollars to China. 200 billion US dollars in China. Yeah. That's only the export, not to mention the huge profits taken back by Europe invested companies in China. 40% of the EU enterprises investing in China, actually 40% of the profits they earn in China are back in Europe. That's the case. It's a globalized economy. Europe still has a very favorable seat in this international system of economy and finance. That's true. And besides, last year, Europe has actually 40 to 50 billion US dollars of trade in surplus with China in services. These are also true. So I think we need to see the fuller picture from both sides. And when it comes to negotiations, yes, I think what is lacking is not only proper understanding and perception of each other, but more importantly, lack of communication, like what we had today. Such kind of meetings, we need to have more meetings like this. We need to have more meetings between think tanks, between scholars, between business people, students, and between government officials. Yes, there are channels of communication, but I don't think that we have made full and good use of all these communication channels and meeting mechanisms. And people may have followed very closely President Trump's visit to China a few weeks ago. I would dare to assume the challenges and the difficult problems between China and the United States could be more than those between China and Europe. But between China and the United States, even these two big countries, the top two economies in the world, were able to manage their differences through dialogue. Of course, people say you have not resolved all the issues. Those issues cannot be resolved once and for good. No, it's true. It's just like the issues between China and Europe. Whatever China does, whatever Europe does, they are not going to go away overnight. But it takes serious, patient, and sometimes creative thinking out of the box, talking out of the box to try to find meaningful solutions to help us succeed. I would say that we do not want to see a weaker or disintegrated Europe. That's not in China's interest. A stronger, more successful, integrated Europe is in the best interest of China. Yeah. Because we benefit from such a Europe in the past, and we believe we'll continue to benefit from an even more successful Europe in the future. But I don't think many of the people here are aware that the same applies to Europe. A weak, a disintegrated, poorer, more miserable China would in any sense serve the interest of Europe? We have already enough problems in this world. The last thing we would like to see is major problems either in China or in Europe or even in the United States. These are the three major propellers of the global economy. We would like the three of them working together in good shape, not breaking down. And the last thing I would like to say here is that I think it's a little bit concerning that some people in Brussels, they may not represent the overwhelming majority of the views, but they were preparing the public opinion in the European institutions and the public opinion here for a so-called major trade conflict with China. That is concerning and that is dangerous because people already talk so much about the Ukrainian war and the war in the Gulf and the wars in many other parts of the world. People see the results and consequences. And when we talk about trade wars or tariff wars, look no further than last year. Last year, both China and Europe suffered greatly from the tariff war waged by another country. And yes, I don't think that everyone is bold enough to say that all this is over, but at least we have seen that that tariff war has served the interest of nobody, not even those who waged the tariff war. So I don't think that when people are so much concerned about the certainty, stability, and peace in this world, should really prepare any of the public, anywhere, for more conflict, for whatever reasons. We have plenty of means and plenty of channels for communication. We can talk through difficult issues, and we can talk out some really important settlement or solutions. And if people are also making guesses about Chinese response, I will not make any presumptions so early. But I think that if you would like to see how China would respond, look no further than last year. Last year, when the tariff war was waged against China, the Chinese response was crystal clear for everyone to see. China was the only country that stood up to the pressure, maximum pressure, and took all the challenges. And you see the result. Yeah. China's economy grew last year by 5%. And we just had the figures for the past month, May. The May figures have come out today. The figures are also solid and good. Yes. We are steadfast. We know the right way forward for China. That is also the best way forward. That is to continue to focus on opening up policy, which means no matter whether others would choose to close their doors, we will continue to open our doors. Not for the sake of others, but for the sake of everybody, and first and foremost, for the sake of the Chinese. And we believe this open door policy has been a long tradition of Europe and will continue to serve the best interest of Europe and China-EU relations. And as long as we open up our minds and open our arms, I think there's no difficult issue that we cannot resolve between two great civilizations, the Chinese civilization and the European civilization. That's what I have to say now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. I want to pick up a couple of things which you have mentioned. You were talking about competing, playing a competition game, and certainly in Europe we also believe in free and fair competition. But what we've seen over the last decades is that that has taken place within a set of rules, which have not always been perfect, but certainly there has been that global rules-based order, in particular in the trade field. How do you see that developing? What is the impact of that also on EU and China? We are very export dependent. We want to have an open world with a common set of rules. So how do we replace what at the moment is functioning less and less?
Yeah, thank you. I think you made a very important point. As a matter of fact, both China and the European Union, as well as many other countries, have benefited from the existing international institutions and the rule of law that we believe and we also full-heartedly support. Now there are new challenges for all these institutions and the rule of law. I think that, yes, probably it will take time before the systems and institutions to go back to function normally and fully. It will take time. And there may be changes, yes, but when the dust is yet to settle, what is important is to continue to do the right things in the right way. For example, I think that China and Europe, it may be a surprise to many here, but I think that China and Europe have so much in common when it comes to the functioning and how to keep the proper functioning of the WTO and how to adhere to the dispute settlement mechanisms in international trade and investment. As a matter of fact, even for the bilateral dispute between China and Europe, the Chinese, starting from, I think, last year or the year before last, we have made it very clear we are open to have very serious communication with our European friends on institutional or systematic solutions for the trade concerns of our European friends. And of course, if you are not ready, we are also open to resolve specific technicalities. No problem. Whatever you choose, the Chinese are more than open to accommodate. But the thing is that it takes two to tango. Yeah. So I think that in this, China and Europe do have a lot to work together.
One of the areas where, of course, there is also a lot of discussion in Europe at the moment, and you mentioned that also in your remarks, is about overcapacity or whatever term we might choose. People in Europe are talking about a China shock, which I think illustrates the level of concern which is there. Now you have said that you don't believe that it is caused by what Europeans are at the moment talking about, subsidies, etc., but that it is a real issue. So how do we address this issue of imbalances, especially in a context where this has not been an issue only for the last few months? It has been a persistent discussion. So how can we resolve that to have a more balanced relationship?
Yes, we need to put things in perspective. This is a real issue, and I fully understand the concerns of the public and the businesses and governments here, of course. At the same time, as I said, that the stereotypes are very much deep-rooted, and people still do not have actually adequate information from different sides. In China, we believe when we face some difficult issues, we need to listen to more than one opinion or benefit from more than one perspective before we can make any more accurate and right judgment and conclusion. This is one thing. For the trading balances, they are real, but I think that, as I said, that China has also, over the past 40 years since China's reform and opening up, since the late 1970s, 40 years, in the first 20 years, 1980s and 90s, China was on the receiving end of the trade deficit. China had huge trade deficit in its trade with Europe. And the Chinese consumers with no coercion from our European businesses would prefer to buy Volkswagen, Mercedes-Benz, BMW, Peugeot. My very first car was a Peugeot. That's true. But I don't think that in any of those circumstances, European brands or European cars, although they took about 80 to 90% of Chinese car market, were deemed as a threat. And now things are changing, but still you see that among the European car market is a big market. But last year, China exported just about 2 million cars to Europe. But still, Volkswagen and Mercedes-Benz and BMW sold millions of cars in China's market in the past 40 years. And we do not see it as a problem. So this is something we need to put into perspective. And as you just now said, that Europe is also an export-oriented economy. In terms of the foreign trade ratio, which means that one's foreign trade relative to one's GDP, Europe trade ratio is about 37%. 37% of Europe's economy have to do with exports or imports. And that ratio for China is 35%. And for Belgium, of course, is even more typical example of a trading nation, very successful trading nation. Belgium's trade ratio is 85%, which means that 85% of things produced here are for exports. We do not call it overcapacity. We do not call it a threat to international trade or distortion of market. So we need to put things back into perspective. And to resolve how to resolve the trade imbalances, we need to have serious talks, not political talks. I mean political in the bad sense. Political in the positive sense is political determination to resolve real issues. That's political in the positive sense. And we must be serious with the issues. And there are many ways to gradually reduce the imbalance. There are ways, but whether you are ready to do that or not. For example, we have about billions of trade deficit on the European side, and now Europe would like to export more pork, beef, vegetables, wine, chocolates, perfumes, luxury bags to China. Of course, that will help. But there's no way for these products to change the imbalance, not only in the near future, but in the longer term. The Chinese consumers will not buy so many bags of pork or beef from Europe that will redress the imbalance. Europe is strong not only in agricultural production. Europe is strong in many fields, machines, AI, and also in pharmaceuticals, in chemicals. People talk so much about competition in the cars, chemicals, or also cosmetics or pharmaceuticals. But indeed, Europe is still competitive in these areas. And China needs your products and your services in huge numbers. It's just that when trading with China, because of the so-called de-risking policy, because of the security concern, that the people tend to trade only agricultural produce with China. So the European exporters are trading with China with one hand bound behind their back. It's unfair, not from the Chinese side, but from the European side. I think, of course, each country or block of countries may have its legitimate concerns, security concerns, but it can be dealt with in a more balanced, comprehensive context. In China, we also have our security concerns. Take Huawei, for example. Huawei is unfairly treated in Europe. But even till this day, Nokia and Ericsson are still legitimate bidders for the core communication networks in China. Do we not have security concerns? We have. But we trust the companies. And we trust we are in full control of the networks. I think that our European friends should be more confident in your own regulation and in your own legislations and implementation of your regulations. You are strong in this. So I think there are many ways we can redress this, but we need to take serious discussion and serious efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I'm looking at the organizers also whether we have another 5 minutes to go to the audience. Yeah. So I'll take a couple of questions. Most 3 questions. I see 2, and then we can.
Sure. Dr. Yu Jiezheng House. Ambassador, I have one question for you. Obviously, you have presented China's perspective very eloquently in a very convincing manner. But when you mentioned one of the biggest challenges between China and Europe is on this misconception and also on these different narratives. And what are the most effective way if you want to change those narratives that Europeans have towards China? I know it cannot happen overnight, but what might be the most effective way? Thank you.
Hello, this is Carlo Marticelli from Politico. Thank you for taking my question. Ambassador, you said that last year China was the only country that stood up to the Trump tariffs and they achieved maximum result and notably implemented controls on critical minerals, and that seemed to roll back or at least bring the US to the negotiating table. Do you think we might see a repeat of that should Europe take a more confrontational stance with China with regard to trade policy? Since we're seeing discussion of that, and we might see that in the next week's EU Leaders Summit. Thank you.
I think first question about what is the way out for dispelling these misconceptions. I think that it's difficult, but it's also easy. Yeah. What is seriously lacking is communication between our two sides, the Chinese and Europeans. We need to have more direct exchanges between us. So the easiest thing, I think China has adopted the right policy, and it's working slowly but surely, that we offer about the visa-free treatment for many of the European nationals. For Belgian nationals, for example, it's very easy to go to China, to see the China that has been long demonized and suffer from stereotypes, to see for yourself. You don't have to agree with China and China's views. Just see for yourself and come to your own conclusion about what China is like and how China's economy is doing and how subsidies are really working to help Chinese businesses. See for yourself, for European businesses, for European students, tourists, the same for the Chinese coming this way. Of course, we would expect that the Europeans would make access to Europe by Chinese more convenient and more direct. And the good news is that we are very well connected by direct air flights, even in Brussels. Nowadays, we have over 30 direct passenger flights connecting China and Brussels. And it flew to about Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, Chengdu, Chongqing, Hong Kong by various airlines. It's very good, and I would encourage more travels. If you do not believe what people may say, either here or in China, go to China and see for yourself. For the Chinese, come and hear, talk to each other, talk to the common people, talk to your peers in each other's countries. That will help. And as for the political question, I think that I would not presume what will happen in the coming months or years. What I would like to presume is that we hope that the two sides, China and Europe, would really be able to manage the differences and talk through difficult issues and reach and arrive at the solutions through dialogue and communication. This not only applies to this round of dispute settlement, but also to future rounds of dispute settlement. When we have nothing to do with each other, there will be no dispute. When we have trade as large as 800 billion euros, we would have dispute from time to time, sometimes even difficult ones, but we need to have dialogue. That's my suggestion.
Okay, thank you very much, Ambassador. Thank you also to the organizers for inviting me. I don't want to stand between people and their lunch. I think certainly nobody really wants to see a trade war. I think there is the recognition that this would be mutually detrimental. But I think in terms of mutual understanding, sometimes I also would ask the Chinese to see more of European concerns. And we live in a world where at this moment in time we still have Russian aggression on our doorstep, where security is a very high concern for Europe. And that is not going to go away in the coming years. So hopefully we can find ways of recognizing each other's concerns, addressing some of the issues between us, so that we can have a positive development rather than a trade war which nobody wants. So thank you very much, and thank you also to the audience for having indulged us a little bit into your lunchtime, and wishing you all continuous good discussions. Thank you.
Thank you.